Are we?
Yes, we are ready, Mayor.
Okay. So, good afternoon. Welcome to our special town council meeting. If you would please silence your cell phones and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, Dina, roll call.
Roll call, Vice Mayor Bolin.
Here.
Councilmember Culleton.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Tryon. Here. And Mayor Crowder.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Item, any cards, Dina?
I have no cards.
Okay. So, item 2A, following town council's review of the actuarial valuation, be presented by Ross.
All right. Good afternoon, council. So this item before you here covers two informational items that we're requesting to be received and filed, both relating to the town's other post-employment benefit obligation, or OPEB, which relates to the liability outstanding to provide retiree health benefits. So the first item here covers an update of the actuarial valuation of the town's total obligation as measured at June 30th, 2021. This information is usually not specifically required to be presented separately, as this information is usually included within the town's annual financial statements that are reviewed and adopted as a separate document. So as a result, this information has not specifically been presented as a separate item since 2015. However, with the budget goal this fiscal year of taking action to prudently manage the town's pension and retiree medical costs, as well as the recently approved proposed increase to the town's share of medical premium caps through this latest negotiation process, we wanted to bring this information forward specifically to provide an update and current understanding of future recommendations to reduce and manage the future OPEB liabilities. So that's kind of the first part of this item. The second item covers a cost analysis of the proposed change to medical benefit premium as agreed upon during that latest labor negotiation process between the town and the employee units. So as a reminder and sort of point of reference, the amount of the proposed increase has been included in the agenda summary. And when implementing those changes to those medical caps, California Government Code actually requires that the cost impacts of those changes be evaluated by an actuary and made available to the public and council. So in order to determine the extent of that increase in those costs, the town has secured the services of an actuary who is GovInvest to provide an analysis of the impact upon the future annual cost. So we actually have two members of the GovInvest team here with us this afternoon to present both of these items. And with that, I will actually go ahead and turn it over to the Chief OPEB Actuary with GovInvest, who's with us here, Evie Loxana, for a full presentation of this information.
Good morning. It's nice to be here. Thank you for giving us the time to present the latest results of the OPEB valuation as well as the cost analysis of the benefit change. My name is Evie Loxana. As Ross mentioned, I'm the Chief OPEB Actuary with GovInvest. I have over 15 years of healthcare actuarial experience, and I have done many OPEB valuations since GASB first came into play, which was back in 2006, and it used to be called GASB 45. We are now under GASB 75 pronouncement, and we have prepared a presentation to help us focus on the main points of the report. I know that the report is very lengthy, and it has a lot of the required actuarial disclosures, but really there are only a few pages that are really important to consider as the town move forward with trying to figure out how to fund for this benefit. Fine. I'm gonna share my screen and share presentation. Are you all able to see the presentation?
Yes.
So There are three separate sections in the presentation. The first section is going to be a very short section that provides an overview of OPEB valuation basics. I spoke with Ross yesterday, and you may not be familiar with how we do OPEB valuation, so we're just going to run through some basic concepts of the OPEB valuation. And then we're going to review some of the valuation results, as well as talk about the impact of the benefit changes. At any point in time, if you have any questions or need clarifications on the points that I'm referring to, please feel free to stop me. Okay, so diving into the OPEB valuation, I'm sure you are all aware of pension valuation that you receive from CalPERS. OPEB works essentially the same way, it's just valuing a different benefit. So OPEB stands for other post-employment benefits, and we are essentially valuing the liability for all benefits that is not pension. So the town currently provides subsidized retirement health benefits, so medical and prescription drug benefit, and that is the only liability that we are valuing under OPEB. So it excludes anything related to pensions and includes any kind of severance pay or retirement benefit that you are paying for employees at retirement. So there are four different components to the OPEB valuation. The first one is the benefit provision. So obviously you have to know what kind of benefit you are providing to your employees at retirement. We have to know how much the town is paying for these benefits, and we have to understand how you determine when an employee is eligible to retire. The next three buckets are basically just different assumptions because this is essentially a very long-term cash flow projections that starts from retirement until death. There are a lot of assumptions that go into the valuation, and the first bucket is the healthcare assumptions. Because you're providing medical and prescription drug benefits at retirement, and there are many different health plan options that an employee can choose while active and at retirement. We make some kind of assumption as to, what kind of plan they can choose at retirement. And then we also make an assumption as to whether they will cover their spouses at retirement. And of course, just because they are eligible for benefits, some of them may actually decline the benefit at retirement, which is because they have healthcare coverage somewhere else, or they just have better options somewhere else. And since healthcare cost is never constant, it continuously increases, we have to make assumptions as to how fast they will increase in the future. The second bucket of assumption is really an economic assumption. As I mentioned previously, this is long-term cash flow projections, and we need to measure the liability as of a specific date. So we need to calculate the present value of the future healthcare costs and discount it back to the measurement date, which is as of June 30th, 2021 for this report. So the only economic assumption is basically the discount rate that we use for present value calculations. The last bucket of assumption is called the demographic assumptions. We are dealing with long-term cash flow, and we are also measuring liability not only for your existing retirees, but also for your current active employees. Not all your active employees will make it to retirement with the town. Some of them may terminate. So we have a termination assumption built into the valuation. Some of them may become disabled and then become eligible for benefit even before they retire. So there's a rate of disablement, and once they are eligible to retire, not all of them will retire at the same time. So there are different retirement rates assumptions at different ages. And lastly, there's always the probability of death for somebody who's active and somebody who's currently retired. Any questions so far? Here in Unit 9, I will continue on to a review of the valuation results. So the valuation results are shown from the most recent one on the second column to the two older results in the next two columns. So we are reading from right to left. The OPEB liability, the net OPEB liability essentially has increased from about 10 million as of 6/30/2019 to 13.4 million as of 6/30/2021, which is the report that we prepared. There's a little bit of assets, so there is net against the total OPEB liability. So the net OPEB liability essentially is the total OPEB liability minus the asset. The final ratio pretty much hovers around 2.2%. There's not much changes from 2019 to 2021. I'm going to skip the section at the bottom, the actually determined contribution, just because it's easier to talk about that after I explain what is meant by an actuarially determined contribution. But one thing that I would like to point out is that this jump in liability from 2020 to 2021, from 10.2 million to 13.7 million, a lot of it is driven by decrease in the discount rate. So in the past two valuations, the discount rate used to discount the present, the future cash flow to the measurement date was 6.5%. We have to drop it to 2.6% in the last valuation. And it has something to do with what we call a crossover test, which we will go through in a couple of slides. But with the lower discount rate, the present value of the liability becomes higher. Any questions so far? Hi, Karina. We are going to review a few changes that happened since the prior valuation. Because the Memorandum of Understanding for the benefit change was not signed until June 2022, that benefit change impact is not reflected in the 2021 report. It will be reflected in next year's report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. So when we go through the changes since prior valuation, you will not see benefit provision changes. These are all assumption changes that we have made since the last valuation. The first bucket of assumption changes deals with the discount rate, as I talked about. So essentially, it went from 6.5% to 2.6 instead of 2.4 there. 6.5% to 2.6% as of June 30th, 2021, based on updated crossover test, which we will go through in a few slides. The next bucket of assumptions, which is the demographic assumptions, these assumptions piggyback from CalPERS assumptions because basically all your population who are eligible for retired health benefits, they are also eligible for pension under CalPERS. So CalPERS released new actuarial assumption review in 2021. So we have reflected the newest assumptions in this year's valuation. The demographic assumptions, as well as the other two assumptions on the screen, the healthcare assumptions and the other assumptions, they have an impact on the liability, but they are not making a material impact. It's really the discount rate that drives the liability change from 2020. So going back to the healthcare assumptions is basically a trend rate. It's a long-term projection of trend rates that they are based on the Society of Actuaries study. So this tends to be updated every time we do a full valuation. So this year we are updating to the most recent, what is called a Getson table. And then the other assumption is on the payroll growth. It also follows the CalPERS experience study, and although the benefit is not necessarily pay-based, so it has nothing to do with salary, but the payroll growth helps us to basically allocate the liability to future portion and past portion. And you are only required to disclose the liability related to past service that has already been accrued. We are also changing the percentage of active employees who are electing spousal coverage at retirement. It has been increased from 49% for both male and female to 80% for male and 60% for female. Any questions? So before we go to the gain loss translation on the next slide, we'll talk about the crossover test first. So the crossover test is a test that it actually has to do to demonstrate whether the trust is able to pay for all future benefit payments or not. If you are able to pay for all future benefit payments through the trust, what happens is that the town is allowed to use the expected rate of return of the trust as the discount rate, which is currently assumed to be 6.5%. But looking at the chart, the purple shows the projected benefit payments of your current members. And the projected plan asset is the yellow. As you can see, the yellow is always below the purple. So this means that from 2021, your trust is only able to pay for a portion of the benefit payments. And this is the reason why we are not able to use the expected rate of return of the trust, because your trust is really not able to pay for all future benefit payments. By 2042, the trust actually went to zero, and then all the way after that, it went negative. So obviously, because we're talking about the trust, we are assuming that there's some kind of money being put into the trust, and there's some money that's being dispersed from the trust. So our assumption, by looking at past employer contributions into the trust, we are assuming that the town will continue to pay for the benefit payments from outside of the trust, and will make the town will make a $20,000 pre-funded contributions into the trust in perpetuity. So with that funding policy, the trust will be completely depleted by 2042. So to the left of this green line, we are discounting the benefit payments using 6.5%. To the right of the green line, we are discounting the benefit payments at 2.19%, which is the municipal bond index. The combination of the two produces a 2.6% discount rate. Any questions on the crossover test? All right, moving on to the next slide. So here's the gain loss calculation on how we reconcile what happened since the last valuation to what happened, the liability as of 6/30/2021. As of 6/30/2020, the liability was 10.2 million. It is expected to essentially stay about the same, 10.2 million as of 6/30/2021. Several things changed. In addition to the assumption changes, there are actual demographic and healthcare cost changes that we have to compare to the expected. As you can see, the demographic experience, the healthcare costs, the demographic assumption changes, and all other changes, this actually reduces the town's liability. Those are all very small negative numbers. But when you look at the discount rate update, did increase the town's liability by close to 4.4 million. So really, the liability changes for the town is increased by 3.5 million, primarily due to the discount rate update. So that is how we ended up at 13.7 million liability as of 6/30/2021. So that was on the liability side, and now we're looking at the asset side. The assets started out at 219,000. With a 6.5% expected rate of return, we are expecting that the asset will end at 233 as of 6/30/2021. We all have heard the great investment return of 2021. So the town also benefited from that, and the investment return actually came out to 64,000 instead of 14,000 to bring the actual town's asset to compared to 233. So here's the historical unfunded liability and funded ratio going back 5 years. As you can see, it hovered around 10.4, 10 million unfunded liability. from 2017 to 2020. All these valuations were completed using 6.5% discount rate. This year it shot up to 13.4 million unfunded liability, and this valuation was completed using 2.6% discount rate. There's not much changes in the asset. It stays flat at 100,000, 200,000, close to 300,000 this year. And the funded ratio went from 1.2% to essentially hovering around 2% for the past 4 years. So going to the concept of actually determined contribution. The actually determined contribution, or we usually just call ADC for short, is basically what we actually would recommend the town to contribute. That if you pay for, if you make these contributions equal to the ADC, the town is expected to have sufficient resources to basically pay for all your future benefit payments. There are two components to the ADC. The first one is the normal cost, and the second one is the amortization payment of unfunded liability. This concept works the same way in pension. So the normal cost is basically the cost of your active employees earning one more year of service. So there's a cost associated with that. So it is only for the coming year, so 1 year's worth of cost. Now, for all the past liability that you have accrued, but have not been funded, those are called unfunded actual liability. We typically amortize those over a 20-year period, or shorter, depending on how quickly you want to get to 100% funded. As the amortization period goes down, then obviously the amount of the unfunded liability, it gets lower, which essentially means your funded ratio will get higher. So the total employer contribution is just the sum of these two. I believe in the past there was, I didn't see a calculation of actually determined contribution in the actuaries report. We have included it in this year's report just so that you know how much the actuary is proposing you should contribute to make sure that your trust is sustainable. Note that there's no requirement to fund this benefit. So the town may choose to fund any amounts other than the ADC, but the ADC is what we would typically recommend so that you see a reasonable progress towards attaining 100% funded. So the chart shows what has been paid as far as retiree healthcare expenses for the past 5 years, and there was really only 1 year where the town contributed more than the retiree healthcare expenses. So the blue bars, those are the premium payments that you make for your retirees. So those are cash expenses that you would have had to spend anyway. There's only 1 year where the town contributed more than the retiree healthcare expenses to the trust, which was back in 2018 in the amount of about 69,000. If you look at the ADC, it is not significantly higher than the retiree healthcare expenses that you would have had to pay for. So for fiscal year ending 2022, we are calculating about $863,000 in ADC, and that is compared to $766 cash payment that you would have had to make for your retiree healthcare expenses. Any questions? Okay, we are reaching towards the end of the presentation, and we are going to talk about the impact of benefit change. So the town signed a memorandum of understanding in June 2022 that basically increases the town's maximum employer subsidy for the non-safety members so that they are the same as the safety members. And the comparison of the current and the new town's maximum employer subsidy for non-safety members are as shown on the slide. So what does this mean? What's the impact of this benefit change? So our starting OPEB liability is 13.7 million. This is what is disclosed in the report. To passage of time, we are expecting that the liability will increase to, well, actually stay the same, about 13.7 million. It just reduces slightly. So with the benefit increase, the increased dollar subsidy will increase the liability by close to 600,000. Because the trust was not demonstrated to be able to pay for all future benefit payments, increasing the town subsidy actually reduces the trust sustainability. So instead of being depleted by 2042, it's going to be depleted about 5 years sooner, I believe. So that will essentially reduce the discount rate further from 2.6% to 2.45%. And with that discount rate reduction, it adds an additional 245,000 to the liability. So the expected liability as of 6/30/2022 with benefit changes is 14.55 million. So one point that I would like to note is that the municipal bond index that we are using for valuation purposes, those are market driven. And as of 6/30/2021, that amount is really, really low. Now we are shifting forward to 6/30/2022. I believe those amounts have increased to maybe about 3% or close to 4%. So we may not actually see this reduction in discount rate. We may actually see an increase in discount rate, in which case it will be netted out. It will essentially offset some of the liability increase to the town subsidy. We have not actually done the calculations because we also have to look at what actually happened to the preferred rates from 22 to 23. But right now, we are anticipating that with no changes in the municipal bond index, we are saying that the liability will increase to 14.55. The actual liability as of 6/30/2022, once we complete our calculations next year, it may actually be lower than that. So this is just an illustration of what happens to the crossover test that essentially supports the discount rate decrease from 2.6 to 2.45, because you can see when the yellow line crosses zero, it went from 2042 to a couple years earlier with the new benefit. And the asset eventually went more negative than before. So that is the end of the presentation. We are working with Ross to sort of do some kind of projections or analysis of different funding scenarios to figure out ways on reducing the liability for the retiree medical benefit. And the one thing that we're trying to do is essentially just find ways to push the discount rate up, which essentially means coming up with a better funding policy that will make the trust, as far as possible, be sustainable, so that being able to pay for all future benefit payments. So, any questions?
Questions?
Is there any advantage to paying down any of the liability now?
Yes, certainly. So, the trust is obviously expected to earn some kind of investment income. And although right now we're not in a great investment return kind of environment, but any money that you put in upfront is expected to earn some kind of investment income that will essentially help you down the road, because the investment income that you get from any money you deposit now will help to pay for all your future benefits. So if you want to make, let's say, lump sum contribution, certainly it will help pay down the amount of contributions that you have to make in the future.
questions? Well, thank you for the presentation. Ross?
All right, yeah, thank you, Evie. And so, yeah, I think with that being said, we're just looking to receive and file the reports as submitted and included in the agenda packet. Unless there's any additional questions I can help answer.
No. The agenda says roll call vote. Do we have to vote on a receive and file? Okay, I didn't think so.
So
I guess we're done with that.
we're,
Ready to move on?
Do we have concurrence, though, to accept the report?
I concur.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
so item 2P. 2B, upon conclusion of the public discussion regarding the Paradise Municipal Code relating to the declaration of what constitutes an unlawful public nuisance. Any cards, Dina, on this?
I have no cards on this item.
Tony?
Good afternoon, council. So during the June 14th council meeting, I gave direction to staff to bring back an ordinance amendment that provides additional tools staff may implement to increase enforcement of fire, life, and safety of the community. However, there must be a balance between abating a nuisance and becoming a public nuisance. And we all know a simple spark can cause a significant fire. So combining state California Code of Regulations, a fire code, and our municipal code, we've done a wholesale change of our definition for a fire hazard. Meaning any operation a fire chief or fire marshal or the designee determines to be a fire hazard will be declared a public nuisance by amending our current definition. So what declaration constitutes an unlawful public nuisance? Going to fire hazard. Fire hazard shall be determined by the town fire chief, fire marshal, or their designated representative. Fire hazard means any condition, arrangement, or act that will increase or may cause an increase of a hazard or menace of fire to a greater degree than customarily recognized by standard by persons in the public service, of suppressing, extinguishing, or of a fire and fire hazards included, and very similar to our previous definition, the accumulation of dry or dead shrubs, trees, or other vegetation, combustible waste, refuse, or material determined to add a potential severity of a fire or violates defensible space standards. Number two, more so what we're going after is any act, activity, process, operation, or omission that which increases or may increase the threat of fire or endangers public safety. And then any condition that may hinder or delay or obstruct the prevention or suppression of a fire. This will be a two-part, kind of two-prong approach, because we will dovetail by promoting One Less Spark, One Less Wildfire program from CAL FIRE. And what this will do, it promotes, are you doing the right thing the wrong way? Right, and here's how to do the right thing the right way. By mowing, using spark arresters, the use of equipment, and the environment. Be aware of your surroundings. And we also include practicing vehicle safety. The proper use to prevent wildfires, secure chains, so dragging parts, check tire pressure, carrying a fire extinguisher, and learning how to use it, and properly maintain brakes to your vehicle. We'll go also, we've included a page on our website. There'll be a drop-down option. People can choose to also inform the public. And we also include equipment use safety, defensible space, and vehicle safety and other conditions you want to be aware of. And then, so council action requested, consider waiving the first reading in town ordinance and read by title only, introduce a town ordinance relating the declaration of what constitutes an unlawful public nuisance, or adopt alternative directive to town staff. I'm available, Chief Purvis and Chief Manson are available for questions.
I have a question. The last time we talked about this, if a person was using a piece of equipment and the fire chief thought that it was not safe to do so, they could tell them that, but they couldn't stop them from doing it, was what I understood. Does this enable them to actually stop them from doing it?
This enables us to write an administrative citation, which is considered an infraction.
So we still can't stop them? They can take the citation and continue on their way?
Well, that could be the option.
I mean, somebody who's really stubborn
Sure.
could do that? Okay, so it does not allow us, if they refuse to comply, to arrest them?
Well, correct. We cannot arrest them for doing
Okay,
it.
I'm just trying to clarify what it does.
And maybe legal can, fill in the blanks that I, cannot.
I can, just to answer that question, we would still have to go into court and get an abatement warrant if they are so stubborn and not willing to comply voluntarily. Then certainly we would have to go and file for an abatement warrant to correct that particular nuisance, yes.
So how would we be able to regulate people's behavior so that if they were really endangering the community in terms of fire, to be able to stop the behavior? How can we do that if this ordinance doesn't do that?
And when I brought this up, that's exactly what I was looking for, is I don't, I'm not looking for somebody to sit there and get a citation and burn down somebody's house. I'm looking for a way to stop it so somebody's house doesn't burn down. That's what I was looking for.
So, I'm sorry.
I was waiting for an answer from the attorney. What can we do as far as an ordinance that would enable us to stop their behavior instead of giving them a citation?
We still have methods where we don't have to go and get a warrant if for whatever reason the property and the condition of a property threatens life and safety, and certainly if it's a health and safety concern, we do have certain code sections that we can employ and invoke in order to proceed without a warrant to correct that. Certainly, there's sections in our code that do state that certain violations can amount to an infraction and can proceed to criminal charges if we want to, refer that to the district attorney. I mean, there are certain methods we have that have more teeth, but there is a procedure we have to follow. If we do investigate and observe a nuisance or a violation of our code, we cite them, we request corrective behavior, we give a time period for them to voluntarily comply, and then after that, we talk next steps, whether that be an abatement warrant for our team to go in and correct that behavior, whether that is additional citations and fees, whether that's a lien against their property for failure to comply, and also to address citation fees owed on the property. There are code enforcement mechanisms, but there is still a procedure. It's hard to just have people comply, and invoke that with some type of greater teeth than what we have.
So I don't care about hard. I'm asking point blank then, is there anything we can do to stop it by law, or are you telling us there is no way that we can do what we're asking to do?
I guess I need a little more direction. What do you want to do by law? Do you mean that we just go in and correct whatever is existing on the property, we abate it? Certainly.
No, we're talking about behavior. So we're not talking about the condition of the property. We're talking about a person who's doing something that's putting the rest of the community at risk in the view of the fire chief. And he told us that he can ask them to stop that behavior, but he can't make them. And
What if we did this? I mean, obviously they can't do law enforcement. They can't, they're not into that. So that's a police thing, and they're not deputized to do that. So that's not gonna happen. But what if there was something that was happening, I've seen this before, they've gone out and actually put a truck on that spot to watch, oversee, and then they pay for that truck and those people that are there. I know you can't have that in a bunch of different places, but I've seen you guys do that before when there's something that someone is burning, they shouldn't be burning on a day that is not a burn day or something like that. And that truck's out there that's overseeing what's going on, watching. If they don't stop, it stays there and they pay for whatever the costs are of what happens. I've seen that happen. That might be a possibility. Just throwing it out there.
so why couldn't the fire chief call the police? I'm just failing to understand why we're unable to stop someone who's putting the whole community at risk. Is that, I don't get it.
So the challenge is we look at it as three different angles to it. The information to the public, which we can do that as the fire side. And then the education to the public of, hey, we want you guys not to do this. It's a red flag day, high fire danger, extreme potential for a fire to take off. Then when you get to the enforcement side, because we are not law enforcement, we would have to request, no different than if we have somebody that starts a fire, we can come in and we can do the investigation, say, okay, it probably is arson or negligence. And then we call Paradise Police Department. They would then come in and assist us with the investigation. And if they saw that there was a law that was broken, then they would come in and either issue a citation or arrest the individual. So I think it's something where we'd have to work with Chief Reinbold and figure out, does it fall under a health and safety code? Does it fall under a penal code? What section would it fall under, and what would they be able to do? And then it would be a matter of what the district attorney's office would allow for the prosecution of those individuals. But for us, all we can do is come out and educate them and say, hey, you're doing a bad thing right now. We could allow the resources, but now you're tying up a town resource that's not going to be available for something else that breaks within the town.
But you could break away. I mean, if something
Correct.
else happened, had to pull them, they could pull them away, but they could stay there and as long as they're not having another event. Just a possibility. I'm just throwing it out there. Then there's a cost to that, and they would incur that cost.
Well, and then we'd have to figure out how we're going to work with that cost agreement for doing that. Because I don't think we currently have a mechanism. The state does for when you actually have a fire that takes place, then we have a cost reimbursement back from the individual that started the fire based on negligence, arson, and that kind of stuff. So I'd have to look and see, but I don't think we have anything within the town that allows us as a fire department to go ahead and charge it back to the individuals or the community members.
Okay.
Because it's a tax-paid service, so
Yeah.
it would be something we'd have to look into on that aspect.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. I'm just thinking if someone's mowing, they're not supposed to be mowing, it's one of those days, they don't stop, we got a truck there watching them, we'll leave as soon as you stop, and they're not stopping.
Yeah, and like I said, is once they start the fire, now you've got them from negligence. If it burns off of their property on another person's property, now they're liable.
It's always after the fact, though.
And then, exactly, that's the challenge that comes along
Right.
with it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at the preventative steps to how to prevent that from happening. So to go that whole course of route with the law enforcement side, I would probably have to sit down and have a discussion with Chief Reinbold on that also.
So I think what I'd like to see then is I'd like to see that discussion happen before we go with what's in front of us, my opinion.
Okay.
Because I think we need to have a tool to stop. I don't think it'd come up a whole lot. But, if it does, I don't want to tell the neighbor, gee, we're sorry your house burned down because your neighbor's an idiot and we can't stop him. That's not acceptable.
Yep.
I have a question before we table this. Does this, what is before us today, does it provide you with something that you think would be helpful?
So it's more information to the public than anything. By providing this, this is what the state of California has produced from the CAL FIRE side to try to inform the public and educate them on preventative resources from starting fires. It's not going to do anything on the legal side for us to be able to hold them accountable. Once again, we would have to go back to either the penal code, health and safety code, public resources code, to hold them accountable, which is our separate, we have post candidates or police officers that work for CAL FIRE, and that's their job, is when we have something like that, they can go in and deal with it. But us as non-post, we cannot go in and actually stop them, physically stop them. We don't have any law enforcement capabilities of it.
I get that. What I'm asking is, irregardless of how that goes, because it could go the way that we find out we really can't do anything, is what's before us today helpful to you? Should we pass that, in your opinion, anyway?
Absolutely. We're talking about red flag days. We're talking about different days when we have issues. By not allowing them to mow after 10 a.m. Now you're reducing that risk. Once we get into the noon to 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you're looking at the high fire danger areas. We're preventing one less spark from being able to cause any issues in the community. So by getting that on board and passing that, it's allowing us to be able to help inform and educate the public to prevent them from doing that. But it's only a preventive tool for us.
So, to what you were saying, Steve, I would like to see that conversation with the police chief happen too, but I think we should go ahead and pass this today anyway.
So can I make a couple comments?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I think a couple things in looking at this. So I'm pretty comfortable with legalese, and I'm pretty comfortable with laws and things like that. But in reading this, it wasn't really clear, and I think it's kind of important when we have ordinances that our residents can read them and go, okay, this is what they're wanting from us. It also helps law enforcement when they have to go in and handle an ordinance or things like that, okay, these are the specific things that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So I know that you're using the red flag warnings, so I'm wondering if either we reference in here, any act subject to the red flag warnings, or actually list the red flag warnings in here. So that way it's really clear to them what they're not supposed to be doing, and also it helps law enforcement when they go out and say, look, it's right here in the ordinance, this is what you need to do.
Agreed. This is, the amendment was to cover all times, not only specifically for red flags. There could be a non-red flag warning day, and somebody could simply do an action different, but we could also wrap that red flag warning in.
So I know that we try to write things, keep them somewhat open, but when you write something and you keep it open, it makes it harder to enforce it later on. So that's why I was wondering if maybe you made a reference in here of, any act
We could,
going against red flag warning and things like that, then I would be more comfortable voting for that, because that way it clearly will show our resident what they need to do, and then it gives law enforcement and fire a tool going, hey, look, right here it says in our ordinance, this is what you're not supposed to be doing, so.
So, the only concern I had, I agree with Jody. I think if this is a tool that helps with the education and everything, the only concern I had about the way unless all of the language you presented is the CAL FIRE language, all of that you presented.
it's a combination of, California.
Okay, here's my problem, and kind of there, and I don't have it in front of me, it's not in this packet, I don't think. But it said any act that causes or could cause, and, it was so, is that in here? Yeah, that's the part that suddenly, to Rose's point, to the average citizen, right? Here's another one of these regulations that that's so open-ended, that could mean anything. It's not in any way specific, it's just
Sure, we can.
fire hazard means any condition, arrangement, or act that will increase or may increase, well, if the wind changes direction. I have no control over that, but, if it's not blowing out of the north when I start mowing my lawn, but it is, I don't know. It's just, there's something about that kind of language that just, to the citizen, just kind of looks like draconian, kind of, to me, I'm just saying. I share Jody's frustration and Steve's, the fact that maybe what we need to do is make a law, Because like if I'm a drunk driver and I go out here and you pull me over, you're going to stop me from driving. I'm not going to get to drive down the street. So if I'm out there starting a fire, and one of the concerns I had, there was a fire on Harrison not too long ago that some people started. And there was no extinguisher, no water on the site, which is another problem we have. We're ticketing people to clean up sites. There's no water on the sites, and what happens when a fire starts? Let's say I'm out weed eating and I start a fire. It's small, it gets contained. The fire department shows up and puts it out. Do I get billed for that? Or do we just eat that because it's taxpayer responsibility? I mean, I've started it on a red flag day, or I've started on using a metal blade or whatever. I mean, if we determine once we arrive at the scene, do we get reimbursed for that? People get fined for that? No.
Not within the town limits, no. I mean,
Even if I'm violating the red flag rules, even if I'm doing these things that are unsafe?
so outside of the town limits, then yes, we would fine them as a CAL FIRE.
No, I mean in the town limits. That's what we're talking about.
We don't have any laws or ordinance for reimbursement.
So that's what we need to put in here then.
Okay.
I think. I mean, if we're gonna doctor this at all, we need to add that. Because I know of ones that were some of the construction people on the job site across the street ran over and got it contained before you guys got there, but you still had mop up. I'm just saying there are people that are doing it. If there's no penalty to it, we need the education, but there also has to be some accountability. If you start a fire, weed eating or mowing your lawn on a red flag day, and you guys have to come and put it out, it's gonna cost you some money. If your electrical box shorts out and catches your house on fire, we're gonna come put it out because your taxes pay for that, but we're not gonna, or if the lightning strikes. But if you start the fire, that's arson. I'm sorry, especially if you know better. It's just my opinion, okay, I'll shut up.
I agree with you.
We should add that, don't we? If we can we, is that what it takes?
We'd have to dive into it and see, and I don't know what legals issues would be around that, because I have had Paradise PD come out and arrest individuals for arson, for negligence, for some of those issues but we've never gone down the cost reimbursement for having the equipment there.
So generally, when you observe a non-compliant property, even if the fire has been contained, you could still cite them, and our administrative citations come with penalties with a fee. So they should be still cited. And so yes, there will be a fee assessed against them. And you can also assess inspection fees against a property that is non-compliant.
It's not about properties, okay? This is about citizens, this is about people. Maybe they own the property, maybe they don't. This is about people doing something unsafe during fire season that starts a fire on their or other people's property. And when we have to go put it out, we want to be able to recover the cost of responding to that, as well as fining them or something else, because we're going to educate them, we already have and we're going to continue to don't do that.
Turn your
Don't start
mic on.
fires.
Turn your mic on.
Oh, don't start fires, and so that, I mean, this is not just about non-compliant properties. This is about citizens behaving improperly. So I would advocate, I mean, I don't want to make more laws and all that stuff, but I don't want my town to burn down again. And I certainly, people that are starting fires irresponsibly because they don't pay attention or whatever, don't want to follow the rules, whatever their reason, I don't care. There's a cost associated with that. You don't get to start a fire in the town of Paradise going forward. If you didn't cause it, okay, but if you caused it, you got to pay for it. That's my opinion.
And so in regards to that, so I make sure I understand what you guys are, not only are we looking, so if they get arrested, they're gonna get fined, they're gonna get court fees, they're gonna get everything else that gets associated with that. You also wanna look at the cost of reimbursement for all the resources that are there at the incident for the duration while they're there.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna win on the arresting people. I mean, that's gonna be a pretty extreme case. But you're gonna have a lot of people that are negligent, and they're gonna not realize it's 12:30, they're still pushing their mower around, and a spark will happen and the fire will start, and you guys will show up if they aren't able to contain it themselves. So I don't necessarily say that person's going to be arrested, but they need to pay for the resources that get expended to put it out. if they're in violation of any of the, any of those things. I mean, there are going to be people that we want to arrest, but we don't have that tool in the toolbox yet, and I'm not sure that one's going to happen soon, but we could make this other stuff happen pretty soon, I think.
Okay.
And then the last thing to that is maybe make it specific or at least reference back to red flag law so that way people can see exactly what it is that they're not supposed to be doing.
Okay.
It just cannot be subjective. We cannot have it based on an opinion of one person, the next person goes out, it's a different opinion. That's where we get in trouble. We've got to have, if we're going to do this, we're going to go down this road, we got to have specific things that it means, or else we're just setting ourselves up for big trouble. And I don't like that. So it cannot have the preference of one person over another, and one person thinking it's bad and this one not, and it's got to be very, very nailed down if I'm going to vote for it. So I agree with the fire thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, in regards to that, so I can read you, I did some research, we did a couple of them for different communities that have red flag restrictions. And so one of them, in the event of a red flag warning, gas-powered landscaping, construction, and gardening equipment shall not be operated. Electric-powered landscaping, construction, and gardening equipment may only be used if it can safely be used without causing a fire or a spark, such as when hitting a stone or used near dry vegetation. There's other ones that have specific permits for outside, large construction or something like that, where you need to do it on a red flag day, that could still be permitted. There's other ones that have stipulations for a fire watch or an individual that's sole purpose for watching for any sparks or ignition. And then they must have an approved water supply available from a hose, water truck, etc. So there's a bunch of different options that are out there. The problem that we run into is we were still not trying to get too specific in it because there could be different events. It could be welding, could be grinding, could be mowing, could be chipping. And so that's the issue that we're running into is if you guys would like us to encompass all of those, we can work on that. But it's just by leaving it a little bit of leniency, it allows us to come out and assess the situation to determine what the inherent danger is of it.
Yeah, I know that there's a fine line there, and I think those of us that have been in law enforcement have worked with those lines throughout. I mean, it's like, what does it mean here? What does it mean there? That's part of what law's about. But I do agree with what Greg said, is that, our residents need to know what they need to do and what they do not need to do, and then we need to make sure that it's consistent for all residents and for, who comes out and does it. I mean, this is definitely a hot button issue. I'm concerned about fire. We're all concerned about the fire. And so there's got to be that line there that we can figure out. And we're not going to get it all. We're not going to catch every situation. But thank you for being open to it.
I'd like to see more specificity. I think you could list those things and then you could say, or similarly impacting activities, so that you have a little wiggle room if there's something you haven't thought of, but at least by listing them, the citizens know these are all bad things.
So my question, if I wanted you to go back and work with Chief Reinbold, could we pass this and add an addendum later to that, or would we need to do a complete new ordinance, or what would we need to do?
I think they're two separate.
Well, we're amending the fire ordinance, and then it would just be another amendment if you wanted to continue on crafting it. The legal ease may be a different section or, of the code. We're doing it under public nuisance.
So
We defer to legal.
So we could still pass this and then do an addendum?
I don't want to pass this the way it is. I want, like Rose and Jody and Greg have all said, I'd like to see more specificity. That word.
Specificity.
That's the one.
We can always bring that back.
I mean, with that, and then I don't know whether it would go in this. I mean, you're changing the language of what is it?
It's public nuisance.
Public nuisance,
is
yeah,
what
you're
is
just-
the definition for fire
But
hazard.
whether or not we
is
can
the
add, whether that goes with this or at some other place, because I think the law enforcement, the arresting people, that thing, that's a whole different ball of wax. That's a whole different, I don't think it's a simple ordinance. I think ordinances only allow us to go write citations, you know, so, but I would certainly like to see cost recovery on anybody that starts a fire be included, whether it needs to be a part of this or it's a different vehicle. But, so I would say bring it back, that would be.
So how about if I try and, it sounds to me like we need this to come back with more specificity, with specifics about red flag days, and with language that says we're going to collect for our costs if you start a fire, in addition to fining you. Did that get it? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Very good, thank you.
All right.
Okay, well, it looks like we're done, so meeting adjourned.